I'm going to finish this long unit where we began, back in India, but now we've come all the way forward in time to the 16th century CE. The Mughal dynasty was founded by a prince named Babur who was descended from both Genghis Khan and the rulers of the Timurid dynasty. After a falling out with his relatives in Central Asia, he decided to head south to seek his fortune. By his death in 1530, he had conquered northern India and established an Islamic empire. His grandson Akbar conquered even more of India and was widely renowned as a fair and efficient ruler who extended the protection and religious liberty to his largely Hindu subjects. Jahangir, whom we'll meet in just a minute, was Akbar's son, and Jahangir's son, Akbar's grandson, Shah Jahan, was the man who built the Taj Mahal as a mausoleum for his wife and later for himself. Here we come to the last illustrated manuscript miniature in this unit, a Mughal work that dates from 1620. In Europe, this is the period of the late Renaissance and early Baroque, and the Mughal rulers were well aware of this world outside of India. The British king had even sent an ambassador to the Mughal court. And I'm pretty sure that's why this work, although it's splendid in its own right, ended up on the College Board list. This is all about cross-cultural exchange and influence. The supposed message of this work is that this Mughal emperor would rather hang out with a holy man than hang out with kings, that religion is more important to him than political power. But what might suggest that this is not really the whole story? There's that halo around the Sultan's head and not around the Sheikh's. And it's Jahangir's hand that is covered with jewels. The hourglass and the inscription both suggest that time runs out even for rulers, but then Jahangir is sitting on top of that hourglass after all. The work also exhibits clear hierarchy of scale. The Sheikh, to be sure, is bigger than the other kings, but Jahangir is bigger than the Sheikh. The Sheikh also receives the gift in his shawl, not in his hand. He observes royal protocol by refusing to touch the royal personage. On the left, we see two kings that seem to have a lower rank than the Sheikh. Who are they? Well, I've labeled the cast of characters here. The fellow on top is an Ottoman sultan. Mughals and Ottomans were vying for dominance of the Islamic world at this time, and this painting makes it pretty clear that the Mughals saw themselves on top. Notice how deferentially the Ottoman ruler is approaching the king. So what's different about the way the European king is portrayed? And by the way, this was probably based on a portrait of James I that was a gift to Jahangir. This king is looking right at us. Art historians, however, think this is due to Bichter's careful copying of the European painting rather than to any kind of statement about the superiority of European rulers. Notice that James is not quite touching his sword. In a real painting, he'd be grasping it as a symbol of his power. What do Bichter's clothes and his headdress tell us about the artist? He is a Hindu working in a Muslim court. The early Mughal Empire in this regard was rather like the Caliphate of Cordoba, open to talents across religious barriers. The brilliant colors, the meticulous detail, the hierarchical scale, and the symbolism all identify this as a Mughal work. But note that the miniature painting has some European elements, in addition to the obviously copied portrait of an English king. The carpet with its figures of what look like Greek nymphs is Renaissance European in style, and so are those little angels or putti. Stay tuned for Baroque art, which is contemporary with this work. The round gold halo, too, is not typical of Islamic art, although Buddhist art sometimes placed oval halos or mandorlas around holy figures, especially the Buddha. But note again that it's the king, not the saint, who gets a halo. What about perspective? Well, we see a little in the foreshortening of Jahangir's legs and maybe in the way the hourglass comes toward us. But the general impression of the picture space is flat, and the hierarchical scale, of course, defeats perspective. Drum rolls. This is the last work of this long unit. So let's watch two video clips about the Taj Mahal. The first, from the History Channel, focuses on how the building was engineered. The second, from our Islamic art and architecture video, focuses on the Taj Mahal's beauty, but as you'll see, takes issue with some of the History Channel's interpretation. Remember that the College Board wants you to be aware of competing interpretations of works of art. This is the kind of information that could earn you that rare complexity point in an essay. I'll talk about the visual contextual long essay and that dreaded complexity point in my last lecture for this unit. So what makes this building so breathtakingly beautiful? I'll note that I was there just a few years ago. I kind of expected to be disappointed by the Taj Mahal, and I was not. It is extraordinary. Part of this is its graceful symmetry. That huge central iwan is framed with a pishtak, or vaulted archway, with two similarly shaped arch balconies stacked on either side. The motif of stacked pishtaks is replicated on the chamfered, that means angled, corner areas, making the design completely symmetrical on all sides of the building. 4 minarets frame the tomb, one at each corner of the plinth or platform facing those chamfered corners. Do not be fooled, though. This is a mausoleum, not a mosque. The minarets add balance, symmetry, and rhythm, but they do not call worshippers to prayer. The onion-shaped dome echoes Timurid architecture and again is matched by smaller domes on each corner. The white marble and precious stones gleam in the sun, creating the Taj Mahal's famous sparkling appearance. The gardens and the water lead up the building and frame it perfectly, enhancing the vision of paradise that the architect seems determined to create. The dome is actually double-shelled to help the building support its weight. The interior dome is smaller to keep it in proportion to the inner chamber. The finial, that's that design up on top of the building, is an open lotus flower, a symbol widely used in Hinduism and Buddhism. The lotus flower blooms in stagnant water, so it's a symbol of the triumph of beauty and life over ugliness and death. And of course, this is a mausoleum. The carved and inlaid exterior represent the height, and interior represent the height of Islamic craftsmanship with superbly rendered calligraphy and tile patterns. As we move inside to the cenotaph, or raised tombs, the design of the interior is based around 8 halls reflecting the 8 levels of paradise in Islamic teaching. The Taj Garden, likewise, bears the features of a typical Charbagh garden. That's Charbagh. I should have labeled it on this slide. That's the Persian Garden, or Garden of Paradise design brought in by Emperor Babur. The entire square-shaped garden is divided into 4 equal square sections by 2 large, paved primary intersecting walkways. Each of these square sections are further divided into 4 subsections by smaller, secondary intersecting walkways. That's what gives it the name Charbagh design, or 4-garden style. The interior decorations continue the theme of paradise with exquisite inlay work employing precious stones such as the green malachite you see on the left. In this final segment of our Islamic art and architecture unit, our art historian and guide gives us one last glimpse of Islamic artists' attempts to create visions of paradise.